for both the opportunities and the challenges.
We all need to do is to bring back that confidence.
能源在经济发展的作用，同时也看到能源在向绿色转型。
China think they should focus on more on domestic market. I think this is very important. We need a 3 new growth engines.
To keep their work by protectionism, they lost. In the end, they lost.
As we know, over the past few months, one after another, stimulus policies or related to that have been made public from China. We see some impacts already, but many are expecting more to happen in the coming year, especially during China's annual parliamentary season. However, what does stimulus policies mean, and how will it work with the growth potential, especially in the transformation of the Chinese economy? That is the question to be asked. Meanwhile, are the Chinese consumers really spending? I'm sure everybody is asking that question. Well, I'm no expert of either of these questions, but I'm so happy here to be joined by such a strong panel representing very different sectors and also can bring us from the ground some really fresh information and insights. I remember Professor Schwab at the very opening of the forum this year. He said, we all need to have a spirit, something called constructive optimism. Did I remember that right? Constructive optimism. With that in mind, let's share the number of China's GDP reached its target around 5%. That's the latest news. But even with that number, many are thinking, Dr. Zhu, since you are a great friend, I tap on you first. Is China ready for both the opportunities and the challenges of Trump 2.0, the Chinese economy?
I mean, number one, Trump is unpredictable, right? Predict unpredictable is almost impossible. But it's morning, so I'm still in half of my sleep, so I can say something. I cannot remember, maybe later. I think number one, Trump is unpredictable. But Chinese say, you not only listen to what the people say, you watch what he does. So this is very important. He says so many things, but we'll see what he will do. Right? Yesterday, he announced he will import 10% tariff from China sometime next month, so we don't know. But the second point is also important. I think there's a huge room for these two countries to work together and create a huge benefit for both countries. It's much, much bigger than two countries fight to each other, have a winner or loser. We even don't know who will win, who will lose. China still have a $320 billion trade surplus with the US. This is a lot of room to work with, right? So third point, when you're looking for 2.0, we have to go back to what is 2.10, or what is Trump 1.0 impact on Chinese economy. Trump's 1.0 created 3 direct impacts. The first is on trade. The US tariff before Trump launched 301 against China is a 3.75. So this is in line with the most favorable nation tariff. At the end of last year, it's a 19.7. So the tariff actually in 7 years increased 15%. So this is really a big impact. But China keep exports roughly 450 billion to 500 billion US dollar goods to US. China keep roughly $350 billion trade surplus with US. So China really maintain its competitiveness, right? I think that's important. But still, but another side is China don't have trade growth because there's all the growth moving into the other, Asians, Mexico, and others. So Chinese market in the U.S. import share shrink from 21% to 15% now. So it does has impact on trade. I think that's one thing. But in the 8 years, China remains strong exports and economic growth, as you mentioned last year, 5%, so still grow. So China went through the whole thing. So you're looking for 2.0. I would say China understand much better now, I think, So the first, I think the whole strategy is make sure, we do our own business well and right. So you see China announced, you mentioned a big stimulus package in last September, which is stabilize the market, boost the confidence, particularly support the equity market, which is sort of preparation for Trump to come back, right? And now we focus in the economic side more on domestic consumption, more on the manufacturing, sort of digitalization, and more on the green transformation.
Right.
So more on domestic market, more on the tech, and make sure we focus on domestic market. We focus on competitiveness, regardless of what happens outside China. We'll be able to survive.
About the market, the capital market. Bonnie, you have really a big say here. We are not here to do any personality assessment of any politician, by the way. We are here to talk about what would all of this mean for the economy. From the market's perspective, how are they seeing the latest, interactions between the two presidents?
I think actually you're right. Capital markets is always a good bellwether to gauge sentiment. Professor Zhu mentioned the stimulus package, which was announced in late September 2024. So let's wind the clock back 1 year. I was at Davos 2024, January. And what I picked up at the time, and a lot of you would have heard the same, China is uninvestable, right? We remember we went through that phase. Now, fast forward to September 2024. As a result of the stimulus package, which I think took quite a lot of international investors by surprise, all of a sudden they felt, we need to get back in, and very quickly, because the momentum was so ferocious. And let me put that in context. So take Hong Kong, our exchange, as an indication of the level of activity, and I would say it's spectacular. For the first 6 months of 2024, our average daily trading volume was around 100 billion Hong Kong dollars. Immediately after the stimulus package was announced, in the short course of 2 weeks, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange broke record 3 times in terms of the average daily trading volume. The first time we broke it, it was around 450 billion. A few days later, 506. The third time we broke it, which is the current record, 620 billion. 6 times what we did for the first half of 2024. And if you look at it in a more granular fashion, there were 2 forces in action. One, it's the fact that overseas investors have to come in. Remember, this is end of September, early October, the beginning of Q4. Fund managers around the world are looking at it and say, finally, the stimulus package that we asked for a long time has arrived. And the stock market has corrected positively so ferociously that if they don't come in, they fear that they're missing out. And therefore, we saw a huge amount of what we call northbound trading. This is foreign investors taking advantage of the Stock Connect program to invest into the domestic Chinese stock market. The record was broken again, and on the current record of northbound trading is actually 510 billion RMB. This is a high number.
When it comes to green transformation, earlier you have heard from the Vice Premier from China yesterday at the opening ceremony talking about how large that transformation has been and what it means for everybody. I guess there's no better person to go among this panel than to Mr. Hou, coming from a leading energy company, not only in China, but also globally.
我呢是中国石油的总经理，石油公司呢。
I, as president of China National Petroleum Corporation, our main business, of course, is oil, but we are in our own transformation, and that's ongoing. We're transforming into an oil, natural gas, and geothermal generation, electric power, and hydrogen company. China is a developing country, and so industrialization and urbanization are still ongoing in the country. Energy is a driver of this process and a primary product, and the demand continues to evolve for it. In the first quarter of the 21st century, China's GDP has been at an annual average of about 8%. Energy demand has been growing at about 6%. In 2024, China's energy growth was 4%, GDP growth was 5%. Now, what we have here is a large developing country with an interaction between energy and GDP growth. Now, energy is going to be playing a key role in the green transition. So we have a sense of crisis, and we are approaching the low-carbon green transition with a three-step plan. Firstly, clean replacement. We are not only a big energy producer, but also a big energy consumer. We can replace a lot of consumption with electrification and green electricity. We can replace a lot of petroleum demand with that. Secondly, we are working hard to develop new energies. CNPC in northwest and northeast China has a lot of mineral resources. Now, we have geothermal, solar, and wind resources, which are quite rich in these places. So we're trying to develop them in tandem with oil and gas. Our third step of the process is the green transition. We aim at that point that all types of green energy, including hydrogen, account for about 50% of the mix by 2050. We are developing a lot of wind and solar in northeast and northwest China. Also, we have a lot of geothermal resources, and we're starting some pilots with hydrogen. We're transforming some of our petrol stations to places where you can also refill with hydrogen, and we have some pilots in cities of Beijing and Shanghai.
Mr. Seuss, go to you. You told me earlier that you've been in China 26 years, you yourself, because the textile industry interacted with you intensely. Can you tell us more when China is going through this structural reform? Mainly the traditional manufacturing sector are, leaving, while the new transformation, like Mr. Hou was describing, are taking place. How is the manufacturing sector doing, in this case, the textile?
China has developed impressive. And we have to be aware that the world would not have created that wealth without the Chinese growth the last 30 years. Vice versa, China would never have achieved that only on their own without all the interaction with Europe and the US mainly. So, and this gives me this challenge towards, first, open borders, because that was where companies like ours and my previous companies always participated in this open sky and these open borders to exchange technology, not in a naive way. There was always certain geopolitical questions even 30 years ago, but in a way that you can work and trust together. So, and trust and confidence is, as you have said already, it's the base for all economy. The last 10 years, China reduced the coal-fired based electricity from 80 to 60%, but it's still 60%. And the economy is growing. So 60% from something bigger is maybe not 80% of something smaller, but maybe it's 70% of the past. So, but the percentages, the coal impact in China is still massive. And it's strategic because China has top-notch coal in huge amounts. So from a strategic perspective, you have to get out of a source which you have on your own, and you have to get in other sources, and it's not the renewables. Renewables is today 18% in China. Nuclear is only 4%. So and this challenges, on one hand, to grow economy, to build back consumer trust, and to compete internationally in a new world where there is more competition. There is not, with the fall of the iron fence, some of the old behavior, bilateral, whatever, walked away. President Trump, businessman, but he is a dealer. He wants to have bilateral relations. It's multipolar, so you have to find, we as a company have to find our way in which areas we can do work in China without conflicting our work in Europe or in the US. So can I do defense activities in China, actually? No, I cannot. Can I work on energy? Yes, I can. Can I work in medical? I can do. So we have to find our way, how we keep working together, because only then we can grow wealth, and we have to grow wealth because there are still a lot of people very poor on this planet.
Yeah.
And we have to develop manufacturing because, in the end, don't take me wrong, but bits and bytes you cannot eat and you cannot sit on. If you don't have a manufacturing sector, you don't have a sector who is creating a lot of jobs. And in the end, it's about of jobs. People need a work where they can rely on and where they can spend money out of their salaries.
Okay,
and if we don't work on this manufacturing sector, we lose a huge opportunity.
Yeah. All of the answers coming from the other three panelists really reflect that. The lively discussions going on in China about the directions of the economy and the speed of making that change, given the fact there are external uncertainties, there are also internal factors that needs to be improved. Dr. Zhu.
The China growth model usually based on three things. The first, infrastructure investments, which account more than 50% of the GDP. Return is so low, it's gone. The second, the engine is very much on the exports, right? Given the external environment, it's more or less gone. The third engine is on real estate. It's overcapacity. It's really in a big issues. It's gone, right? So all gone. So what China do? So given the situation, China should focus more on domestic market. I think it's very important. We need a three new growth engine. Domestic consumption is number one. Number two, make sure the Chinese manufacturing becomes stronger, because this is the key competitiveness of China's economy. China's manufacturing account roughly 30.3% of global GDP.
Yeah.
It really is equal to total of the US plus Japan plus Germany plus South Korea together. So it's a huge manufacturing. The whole thing is whether we can make sure its part continue, move up the value chain. So in the 40 years China economic reform, in the first 20 years, Chinese people working so hard, labor cost so low, we make made in China is cheap. So in the next 20 years, because we improve the quality, so made in China means cheap and good. Okay. Now, we try to digitalize manufacturing. So in the next 20 years, we'll make sure made in China means cheap, good, and high technology.
All right.
So I think that's the way to go. The third is a green transformation, as Mr. Hou just mentioned. I can tell you it's very interesting. The China's green transformation story is very different from here, from whatever. I mean, people talk climate change more in international arena, but China think the green transformation is a real economic growth thing, because it solves China's energy security issue. Well, we import a quarter of global oil, a quarter of global gas, which is not sustainable, right? We pollute air, water, and the soil, which is not sustainable. So green transformation gives China a window opportunity to move to a sustainable approach. This is important. Move very fast, as Mr. Hou mentioned. I can tell you today, the solar power cost is only 50% of a coal power cost today. Coal power will come because the cost. Everybody talk about Chinese EV. Chinese EV roughly half cost of whatever comparable same level European cars. It is the cost, it's the efficiency. So the green transformation is really become the growth engine now. So I think that's very important.
But Mr. Zhu, the more you talk, some member of our audience feel more threatened. Because China is so much, as you said, efficiency, low cost, and what is the job for everybody else?
That's a good question. Because today, before the manufacturing is a scale. Scale is the cost, right? It's efficiency. But now it's also technology, because iteration, because everything is digitalized. So you have a scale, that means you have a low cost, efficiency, and also high price margins. So I think that's the real thing. So I think that's the reason China need to open the world to invest in the whole world. The whole world would love to work with China. China can do the technology transfer investments. I think this has become ever more important.
Yeah.
If you compete each other, in total, we all will win. If we try to exclude competition, we get lazy, we get poor, we rely on ourselves. So protectionism, and you can study that the last 100 years, wherever a society tried to keep their work by protectionism, they lost. In the end, they lost. Maybe you can say 5 or 10 years, but then you lose. The only answer is be innovative, as our company is doing since 120 years, otherwise we wouldn't exist. Question whatever you do and make it better every day, every morning, which we could learn in China the last 30 years, but not only in China. Europe, seen as the museum of the world, is still one of the big innovation areas in this planet. And they only limit themselves sometimes by the targets they're giving them. But US, Europe, China, the big blocs, they can drive so much together if they work together. They may have different political opinions. We have to deal with that. Different views, we have to deal with that. But if we stop the competition in a positive sense, if we stop the openness to work together, we will not develop the next 20 years in a way how we have developed the last 20 years.
Got it. Okay. Mr. Hou.
我们作为国家石油公司
We are a SOE, but also we are an international company in oil sector.
10%以上的原油
Domestically,
天然气的供应
we supply 50% of oil and 30% of natural gas.
提出
And
的
also in accordance with
这个倡议
the Belt and Road Initiative,
进行油
we have been investing
30年
in overseas for
我们
the past 3 decades.
全球投资的
At present,
油气田的国家有
we
国家
have invested in over 30 countries in oil sector, and also we're investing in 80 countries in the manufacturing
是中国企业
sector and so on.
一个代表
So we are an example of Chinese companies going international.
年在走这个过程中
Over the last 13 years,
一个是向国际同行伙伴学习
first of all, we have been learning from our peers at the international level,
的标准
and we
这个
are
规则
trying hard to comply with the international standard, to respect local laws and regulations, to compete in a fair, transparent manner.
石油公司的合作
We are also cooperating with big oil companies in Africa, in Middle East,
很多项目
and Russia. A lot of projects are going on there.
这个规则意识还是非常强
So we are
合作共赢
trying to be rule-based.
当地投
And secondly, we're working, try to achieve a win-win. And when investing in, for example, in Africa, in Middle East, we pay much more attention to our social responsibility of the company, of enterprise. We pay much attention to religion and culture and livelihoods. We have been donating, investing for some small but nice projects. We try to melt in with the local population to garner their support. And
我们现在我们大概本土化率在85%左右
our localization rate achieved 85%,
雇佣的当地的员工超过10万人
which means we hired over 100,000 local people
为当地税收
overseas,
社会贡献
and we also
这个
contribute
量是比较
to the social development.
Thank you for the information. Bonnie?
What do we mean by constructive? My personal interpretation, 2 things, okay? Both competition and collaboration. And those two can actually go hand in hand. In Chinese, there's a term called 竞合, right? Competition and collaboration, going hand in hand. Now, going back to Mr. Zhu's comment on the 3 things which China wants to focus on: domestic consumption, uplifting manufacturing quality, and green transformation. And that green transformation is an area I feel that this spirit of collaboration and competition could be best manifested. Why do I say it? I actually issued an article on the Web Forum a week ago, which talks about how China can help the world in the green transition. Now, of course, China is doing it for its own reasons as well. And by the way, I'm sure every one of you in the last few days have heard a lot about AI. And AI, one critical ingredient to make it successful is obviously energy. Yeah, the computing power that consumes a lot of energy. So I'm sure with the work that, for example, Mr. Hou is doing, that gives a very guaranteed source of energy, which will help in that AI journey.
I see.
However, more importantly, I think as China is going to do all things to achieve the targets, the carbon neutrality targets, we have not forgotten about the rest of the world. I mean, so many countries, where you're all from, have already stated targets to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 or 2060, whenever it is. The million-dollar question to me is still, how do we get there? How do we get there? Without the technology, without the innovation, it's very difficult. And the cost, right, it could be prohibitive. And therefore, I think in the course of competing, let's also not forget about how we can, on a collaborative manner, come up with a solution that everyone can actually make use of, so that we don't just throw these objectives out. And by the time we get to 2050, everyone just struck their shoulders and say, well, we missed the boat.
Right. Earlier, we promised everybody we're going to talk about the domestic consumption. Are the Chinese consumers really buying? Are they really consuming? So we have very limited time. If you could just within 30 seconds give your perspective, will be really welcome.
25 will still be difficult in the consumer attitude. What we see clear indication about a growing out of the textile industry again in 26. So orders are picking up, and orders can only pick up if there's some trust. But 25 still will be somehow a little bit flat year.
I see.
2025年是把拉动内需消费作为经济的
2025 is going to be a year where the key task is to stimulate the economy through consumption. I'm quite confident about that.
Bonnie?
Oh, just one word, confidence. Okay, you need to bring back confidence, then people will start consuming.
It's a whole lot of discussion as to how to bring back the confidence. Thank you very much. We're going to follow on that in the future. Dr. Zhu.
Chinese consumption is way low from macro level, right? Total 52% is way low. I mean, it's very clear. The Chinese consume on goods is not necessarily low. It accounts for 32% of GDP, which is very much in line with Chinese GDP in terms of $30,000 per capita. And actually, the 32 will drop gradually because we'll consume less material goods, consume more service. Because you need a development service consumption. What is service? Health, education, tourist, culture, sports, all those things is so small.
All right, then. There are many other questions we haven't touched on about the, the real estate issue, the local government debts. Many of those already, in a way, related to the answer. We hope we'll have future opportunities to discuss them. Hopefully, there will be great results a year from now. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, once again.